Hello, everyone. This is Jeff with Mississippi in the Civil War, and the topic I'm going to talk about today is one that's I find of great interest, and it's the flags that Mississippi units carried during the Civil War. And to the men who fought in the Civil War, their regimental flag was a highly visible symbol of unit pride. Long after the war ended, the veterans still had cherished these flags and had very strong attachments to them and treated them as honored relics. Just to give you an example, here's an article from the Port Gibson Reveille from April 12, 1906, and it concerns a couple of Mississippi flags being turned over to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And the article states, "One of those pathetic incidents that so often spring up in connection with the late war between the states occurred yesterday afternoon in the offices of the Department of Archives and History, where two battle-scarred veterans of the Civil War turned over to the state the flags under which they had fought so valiantly and which they had preserved with so much care for over 40 years. The mementoes of that tragic conflict were secured by John W. Broughton, Confederate History Commissioner for Jefferson County, while the two men who released their much-prized banners were Joseph Kling of Jefferson County and A.M. McCollum of Union Church. The flags were of the most magnificent design. The first was that of the Rodney Guards, and just to state, the Rodney Guards were Company D of the 22nd Mississippi Infantry. The flag of the Rodney Guards, which was made and presented during the early part of the war by the ladies of Rodney, to whom it was returned when the regimental flag was adopted. The most pathetic feature of the presentation came when Mr. Kling, who had been desperately wounded at the Battle of Shiloh, gave up his old company flag. The old man, now fast approaching the allotted 70 years, made a striking figure with his long wavy hair, which time had changed to a silvery gray, with his eyes moistened with tears as he thought of parting with his much-loved flag, and with voice throbbing with emotion and feeling, he stated to Mr. Rowland, in charge of the department, that he had intended to be buried with the banner by his side, but after much persuasion had been induced to donate it to the collection, being gotten up by his state for the preservation of the memories of that noted conflict. A strange coincidence is the fact that yesterday was the 45th anniversary of the wounding of Mr. Kling at the Battle of Shiloh." And that's just the kind of reverence the veterans had for the flags they fought under. And I'm just going to give you some illustrations of these flags. It's by no means going to be all the different flags that were carried by Mississippi troops during the war. This is just some of the surviving flags and little stories about them. And I hope you enjoy it. And this first flag is the headquarters flag of General Winfield Scott Featherston's brigade. And this flag is in the collections of the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. I took this picture some years ago when the flag was on display. And the flag from General Winfield Scott Featherston's brigade headquarters was captured by the 88th Illinois Infantry at the Battle of Franklin, Tennessee in November 1864. At the time of the battle, Featherston's brigade was made up of the 1st Mississippi Infantry, 3rd Mississippi Infantry, 22nd Mississippi Infantry, 31st Mississippi Infantry, 33rd Mississippi Infantry, 40th Mississippi Infantry, and the 1st Mississippi Battalion. And in his after-action report on the Battle of Franklin, Brigadier General Thomas J. Wood, commander of the 4th U.S. Corps, said that it was Lieutenant Colonel G.W. Smith, commander of the 88th Illinois Infantry, quote, whose good fortune it was on this blood-stained day of the 30th of November 1864 to render the most important and distinguished service. The 88th Illinois Infantry captured not only Featherston's brigade flag at the Battle of Franklin, but 4 others as well. Peter M. Wolfe of Company A captured 1 flag. Corporal James K. Merrifield of Company C captured 2 flags. Corporal Benjamin Newman of Company G captured 1 flag. And Corporal Samuel Biddles of Company H captured 1 flag as well. Featherston's flag was most likely taken by Biddle's, for in the official records it is noted that he, quote, captured a rebel battle flag inscribed Featherston's division. And this is a picture of General Winfield Scott Featherston taken during the war. On December 9th, 1864, General Featherston reported the loss of 3 regimental colors from his brigade during the Battle of Franklin, and interestingly enough, he did not mention the loss of his own brigade flag. His report, however, illustrates just how desperate the fighting was at Franklin when these flags were lost, and he said in his report, "I would respectfully report that 3 stands of colors were captured from my brigade on the 30th of November, belonging to the 3rd and 22nd and the 33rd Mississippi regiments. The color bearers of the 3rd and 22nd planted their colors on the enemy works and were wounded and captured with their colors. The color bearer of the 33rd was killed some 15 paces from the works when Lieutenant H.C. Shaw of Company K carried them forward, and when in the act of planting them on the works was killed, his body falling in the trench, the colors falling in the works." Yeah, the Battle of Franklin was a disaster for the Confederate Army of Tennessee, and Mississippians in particular paid a very heavy price for the attack there, and the Confederate cemetery at Franklin is filled with Mississippians. That really is an illustration of just how desperate the fighting was. Now this next flag is the flag of the 4th Mississippi Infantry, and you can see this flag is just covered with sewn on battle honors. Units very often would put the names of the battles in which they participated on their flag, and you can see, boy, the 4th Mississippi sure did that. And they were in a lot of battles. They've got Donelson, Fort Henry, Vicksburg, Chickasaw Bayou, Port Gibson, Big Black Bridge. These were all points of honor that for these men, that they had fought in so many battles. And it would have been a mark of unit pride to see so many battle honors on their regimental standard. And the flag of the 4th Mississippi Infantry was captured by the 5th Minnesota Infantry at the Battle of Nashville in December 1864. And the 5th Minnesota paid a very high price for the honor of capturing the 4th Mississippi's colors. Lieutenant Colonel William B. Gare, commander of the 5th Minnesota, wrote of the fighting on December 16th, in which the flag was taken, and he said, "At 4:15 p.m. the order to move forward was given, which was repeated along the line. The 5th Minnesota, with bayonets fixed, moved over the breastworks in their front to the open field which lay between them and the enemy's works, and at a double quick rushed forward under the most terrific and withering fire of musketry and artillery it has ever been my fortune to behold or encounter. Yet forward our line pressed, and soon the colors of the 5th Minnesota were planted, the first in our brigade upon the rebel entrenchments, and the enemy was driven from their fortified position. The regiment pursued, capturing hundreds of prisoners, among whom was Brigadier General Jackson and many other officers. I think I can safely say that the 5th Minnesota captured more prisoners in this charge than the regiment numbered. The glorious victory we had won had not, however, been a bloodless one. The loss in my regiment in this charge had been nearly 100 killed and wounded, which was about 1/4 of my entire command." And this is a picture of the officers of the 5th Minnesota Infantry. This was taken after the Battle of Corinth, Mississippi in 1862. Seated on the right is Lieutenant Colonel William B. Gare. Standing on the left is Adjutant Thomas P. Gare, his brother. And it was he that captured the 4th Mississippi's flag. It can't be seen in this photograph of the flag, but there is an ink inscription on the 4th Mississippi's flag which reads, "Captured by 1st Lieutenant Thomas P. Gare, 5th Minnesota Volunteers at the Battle of Brentwood Hills near Nashville, December 16, 1864." And it was a very big deal for a unit to capture another unit's flag. In fact, it became commonplace for any individual soldier on the Union side who captured an enemy color for them to be awarded the Medal of Honor. I mean, that's how much importance they placed on these flags. So it was a very big deal when your unit captured a flag. This is another particular favorite of mine. This is the flag of the Burt Rifles, Company K, 18th Mississippi Infantry. And of course it's using the magnolia motif, which was very popular in Mississippi. As you remember, the state flag that Mississippi adopted when it seceded from the Union, the first state flag that Mississippi ever had the magnolia tree emblazoned on it. I love that imagery. And the Burt Rifles were given their flag in an elaborate ceremony that took place in front of the Opera House that stood at the corner of Emmett and State Streets in Jackson in 1861. And the Burt Rifles were named for this man, Erasmus R. Burt. He was elected auditor of the state of Mississippi in 1859. He organized the Burt Rifles, and in early 1861 he was elected colonel of the 18th Mississippi Infantry. He was leading the regiment at the Battle of Leesburg, Virginia on October 21st, 1861, when he was mortally wounded during the fighting. And he died at the 7th Brigade Hospital in Leesburg, Virginia on October 26, 1861. He was the first Mississippi officer to be killed in battle, and he left behind a widow and 8 children. A writer for the Richmond Whig lamented that the death of Burt, saying, quote, "The 18th Mississippi Regiment, his state, and the country will feel keenly the death of Colonel Burt. He fell in close action with the enemy, defending Southern soil and a cause that enlisted all his sympathies and energies. He was the model of an upright, honorable man, an experienced, intelligent, and chivalric officer." And I guess you can't ask for a much better obituary than that. Now this next flag is the flag of the Liberty Guards, Company E, 22nd Mississippi Infantry. And I have a personal connection to this flag. My great-great-uncle, Drury Godwin, was an officer in the Liberty Guards, so I always really have loved this flag. And the Southern Herald of Liberty, Mississippi gave the following account of the presentation of this flag to the Liberty Guards. The article says, "The flag was presented to the Liberty Guards by the ladies of the town of Liberty in 1861. It was of silk with 2 red bars and 1 white with blue field, in which were 13 white stars representing the Confederate States. On the white bar was Amor Patri Vincit and the name of the company. It was presented to the company by Miss Judith Walker in an address abounding in patriotism, bidding the boys as well as her brother go forth to defend the country whose sacred rights had been trampled on, and where no longer could the beloved South expect justice from an overbearing North, now become a foe. The flag was received on the part of the company in a neat speech by Mr. H.B. McMakin, a member of the company and its flag bearer." And when the Mississippi units went to war, initially every company in the regiment had its own flag, a distinctive unit or company flag. There were 10 companies in a regiment, so you had 10 separate flags in a single regiment, plus the regimental flag. And very quickly they realized this was way too many flags. It really got confusing on the battlefield. So very early on in the war, all of these company flags got sent home. That's why a lot of them still exist, and the unit would just keep its one regimental flag to represent the entire unit. And then this is another flag that I really like. This is the flag of the 33rd Mississippi Infantry, and this flag was captured at the Battle of Peachtree Creek, Georgia by the 26th Wisconsin Infantry on July 20th, 1864. Captain John Sneed Lambkin, who was the commander of Company E of the 33rd, witnessed this flag as it was being held aloft in the battle, and he said in a reminiscence, "Suddenly I saw the beautiful emblem and its proud and brave bearer fumble to the earth. Oh, how my heart bled to see that noble man and that beautiful flag go down. But animated by a soul of flame which death alone could extinguish, the next instant he was seen crawling toward the enemy on one hand and knees dragging his beloved colors after him. Ah, the death hail was rattling around us then, and many a noble man was fell there to rise no more. Yet many a death-dealing blow was struck by us in return as we rushed, despite all obstacles, right on to the front. I saw our beautiful flag no more, but was told that Silas C. Rushing snatched it from the ground and bore it proudly on until he, too, paid the penalty for his gallantry with his life's rich blood. Again it was snatched up by someone and borne onward until he, too, was shot down. Thus thrice was our colors prostrated, and as often rose, when alas they fell to wave no more over the brave hearts that were wont to march beneath its beautiful folds on to the acquisition of their dearest rights. And Lieutenant Colonel Frederick C. Winkler of the 26th Wisconsin, the unit that captured the flag, wrote this account of how they ended up capturing the 33rd Mississippi's flag. And he stated, "The order came and we moved forward simultaneously with the brigade on our right. We gained the first hill just as our skirmishers were falling back from the second. We moved forward still and had just gained a shallow ravine covered with bushes between the two hills when the enemy appeared in a strong line of battle at a fence running along the brow of a hill in our front. As these two lines were within easy musket range of each other, the battle commenced at once with great fierceness. In our front the field was open, but some 60 yards from our left there was a dense forest. On this the enemy availed themselves and came upon our flank in strong force, opening and enfilading fire upon us, while at the same time the line in front came nearer and nearer until the two lines were in many places less than a rod apart. For a time the conflict was desperate. I took every man who could be spared on the right to reinforce the left. At last the enemy broke and fled. We pursued him on his very heels to the top of the hill, captured the regimental flag of the 33rd Mississippi, and leaving Colonel Drake of that regiment and 34 others dead, and at least double that number severely wounded." And this is the flag of the 41st Mississippi Infantry. Again, it's in the collections of the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And you'll have to excuse the glare on these some of these images. There was just no way with my primitive photography skills to get a proper angle where I wasn't getting some kind of shine off the glass that these flags are preserved behind. But I did the best I could with what I had to work with. But this is the flag of the 41st Mississippi Infantry, and they served in the Army of Tennessee and fought very bravely in over a dozen major battles. In fact, you can see battle honors on the flag for Missionary Ridge, Perryville, and Chickamauga. And in his report on the Battle of Chickamauga, Colonel William F. Tucker, who was the commander of the 41st Mississippi, wrote, quote, "The 41st Mississippi was advancing at a double quick through the woods when it was met by Manigault's men and for a moment was thrown into confusion as they burst through its ranks. But the men responded with a regular Mississippi yell and the command forward and dashed at the enemy, who immediately fled." And this is the flag of the Lowry Rifles, Company D of the 6th Mississippi Infantry. This is another flag that I have a very personal connection to. My great-great-grandfather, Littleton Hardy Johnson, was a private in the Lowry Rifles, and his half-brother, William A. Harper, was an officer in the company and later became its commanding officer. And when Captain Harper died in 1893, his obituary said of him, quote, "He was a gallant and fearless soldier and possessed in an eminent degree the affection and confidence of his men. Not a soldier in the 6th Mississippi Regiment stood higher as an officer and as a gentleman and performed every duty in battle and in camp than did he." In June 1891, the monument to Mississippi's Confederate dead was dedicated in Jackson, and thousands of people turned out for the ceremony. In a newspaper account of the event, it was noted, quote, "Up to that time there had been but one flag upon the platform. It was the flag of the Lowry Rifles, which bore the date of 1861 and the inscription, 'The Sunny South.'" The Lowry Rifles flag was draped upon the railing in front of the place reserved for the orators. The veterans and sons of veterans marched into the hollow square and arranged themselves in lines to listen to the speaking. And I believe one of the speakers at that event was Robert Lowry himself, who had been colonel of the 6th Mississippi Infantry and who was the Lowry Rifles were named for. And this flag is in the collections of the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, as is this one. This is another flag of the 6th Mississippi Infantry. This is the regiment's regimental flag, and it's still in the apothecary jar. It was given to the Department of Archives and History in this jar, and it's never been removed. And the flag is a second national. It looks like this, and it did have a painted slogan on it that said "Victory or Death," and you can see part of the victory there from that inscription. And the 6th Mississippi Infantry saw their first major combat at the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862. The regiment suffered 70% casualties in that battle, and earning them the nickname the Bloody Six that they would carry through to the end of the war. That was the highest casualty rate for any Mississippi unit for the entire war. It was a extremely bloody battle for the 6th Mississippi, and they never forgot it. And this very distinctive flag is the flag of Sweat's Mississippi Battery. And this is its commander. This is a post-war picture of Captain Charles Sweat, who commanded the battery. But this flag is known as a Hardy Corps pattern flag, and it was the flag of the Warren Light Artillery, better known as Sweat's Battery, that served in under General Hardee and then later under General Patrick Cleburne. And when General Joseph E. Johnson took command of the Army of Tennessee in late 1863, he had decided on a standardization program that would have all of the regiments in his army carrying identical battle flags with the St. Andrew's Cross. But General Patrick Cleburne, probably the best division commander in the Army of Tennessee, petitioned to be allowed for his men to be allowed to continue carrying the distinctive blue flags with a white moon that they had been carrying since early 1862, and this request was granted. So all of the flags of Cleburne's division continued to carry their very distinctive blue flags, and Cleburne's division was probably, the best, most hardest fighting division in the Army of Tennessee. They had a very well-earned reputation for hard fighting. In fact, upon hearing of Cleburne's death at the Battle of Franklin, Tennessee, General William J. Hardee offered this tribute to Cleburne. He said, "Where this division defended, no odds broke its line. Where it attacked, no numbers resisted its onslaught, save only once, and there is the grave of Cleburne." And at a Confederate Veterans Reunion held in Waco, Texas in 1904, one of the old soldiers had this to say about the Hardy Corps pattern flag. He wrote, "The veterans who fought under the command of General Pat Cleburne remember the beautiful blue moon flag which in camp, on the march, or in the tumult of battle cheered their hearts and aroused them to deeds of valor which are still going down the ages and will always have a place on the pages of history." And again, you can see this flag has battle honors on it. It's got Tunnel Hill, Chickamauga, and what remains up here of Murfreesboro. You also see it has a big stenciled number on it. That was a United States War Department capture number. This flag was captured from Sweat's Battery at the Battle of Jonesboro, Georgia in 1864, and was not returned to the state of Mississippi till many years later. And you also see the crossed cannons on the flag, which denoted that Sweat's was an artillery battery. Very often, if you saw crossed cannons on a flag, particularly if it was an infantry flag, it meant that that unit had captured artillery in battle, which again was a very big deal. Capturing artillery was a very bloody and dangerous business, and for those units that did it, they liked a little recognition of the fact, and very often they would put cross cannons on their flag as a result. And this is the last flag I'm going to show you today. This is the flag of Cowan's Mississippi Battery, also known as Battery G, 1st Mississippi Light Artillery. This flag is in the collections of the Confederate Museum down in New Orleans. And this is a Van Dorn pattern battle flag. It was carried by the Army of the West under the command of General Earl Van Dorn and was issued to units in 1862. June through September of 1862 are the generally accepted issue dates, but they may have been used a little bit earlier. It featured 13 white stars and a crescent moon on a red field. On February 7, 1862, General Van Dorn sent a letter to General Sterling Price concerning the new flags, and he told him, quote, "So many mistakes have occurred during this war by the similarity of flags that I've had a battle flag made, of which I send you for the Army. Please have one made for each regiment of your Army to be carried in battle." And a lot of the units under General Van Dorn did carry these flags, and were still carrying them, a lot of them, through the end of the siege of Vicksburg. That's where a lot of them got turned in and were captured by the Union Army. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of survivors. These are a rather rare flag today. This is one of the few Mississippi Van Dorn pattern flags still known to exist. There's another up in Iowa that supposedly belonged to the 40th Mississippi and was captured at Corinth. But I really like this flag just because it's so distinctive. And it's not what people usually think of when they think of a Confederate battle flag, but it most certainly is. And this is where I'm going to end this episode. It wasn't very long, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'm thinking about doing a second episode on featuring more Mississippi flags of the Civil War. If you'd like to see something like that, please let me know in the comments. Give this episode a like if you did enjoy it. And as always, I would really love to hear your comments and look forward to seeing them. But thank you very much for viewing.